Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going deep into a book that really stayed with me.
Oh, yeah.
It's Hanya Yanagihara's A Little Life.
Oh, wow.
And specifically, we're going to be looking at excerpts that center on the character of Jude.
Oh,
For folks who haven't read it, he's a character who I think will really get under your skin.
he's one of the most complex characters I've encountered, honestly, in fiction.
Okay, so we have this dense novel, right?
Right.
It's powerful. It's got a lot going on.
Right.
And we want to try to look at some of the key insights about resilience and friendship
Right.
and the impact of trauma, but all through the lens of Jude's story.
Sure.
Where do we even begin?
Well, I think Yanagihara really kind of throws you into the mystery of Jude right from the start.
Yeah.
He's surrounded by these friends who are incredibly loyal, but yet nobody really knows his past.
Yeah, you see that everyone's tiptoeing around him,
Yeah.
especially about his leg injuries. You know,
Right.
it makes you so curious as a reader.
It's like watching someone try to piece together a shattered vase. Right. You have these beautiful fragments. You get these glimpses into Jude's childhood, the trauma, the time in the monastery, the group home, but the full picture remains elusive.
And those fragments, I mean, they become almost more fascinating because of how little he reveals. You know, it's like the less he says, the more compelling he becomes.
His silence is this really powerful force in the narrative. And that's where the friendships become crucial. You have Willem, Malcolm, and JB, and they're fiercely protective of Jude, almost like a shield against the world and its curiosity.
And their connection, it goes beyond friendship, I think. It's almost like they've created this chosen family, you know, to fill this void that's very clearly there in Jude's life.
Oh, that's a great point.
Yeah.
You see that so clearly in that scene at JB's art show. Do you remember where he dedicates a portrait of Willem to Jude?
Yes.
It speaks volumes about their bond. But it's also layered with all of this unspoken history and this shared pain.
And it's not always smooth sailing for them either, right? They're navigating their own lives. They have their careers, their relationships to each other shift and change, and they face challenges. They even clash sometimes.
Yeah.
It reminds you that even the deepest friendships aren't static. They're dynamic and they change.
And of course, there's Willem. Their relationship is one of the most tender and heartbreaking aspects of the book.
Right.
It starts as this deep friendship,
Yeah.
and then it so slowly and organically blossoms into something more.
Yeah, and you see, though, how Jude's past just makes intimacy so difficult for him. It really makes you think about how love doesn't just magically erase trauma.
Exactly. You see that even with Willem's profound love for Jude, that damage inflicted by early abuse can linger and make true intimacy a constant struggle.
Willem goes to such lengths to try to help him, too. Remember when he tries to find that accessible apartment for Jude in London? Or the one on Green Street?
Oh, yeah.
He's always trying to create this safe space for Jude,
Yeah.
both physically and emotionally.
It highlights how deeply he cares for him. But it also kind of subtly makes this point that the novel keeps coming back to, that no matter how much you love someone, you can't fix them. Healing from trauma is so intensely personal.
And that brings us to Jude's resilience. You see it so clearly in his professional success, right? He's a lawyer. Despite everything he's carrying, he achieves so much.
But the author also doesn't shy away from the darker side of resilience, too. You see it in Jude's silence and his self-harm, which are almost like these warped reflections of the strength that he shows in his career.
It's this fascinating contradiction.
Absolutely.
It makes you think about how even the most resilient people develop coping mechanisms that aren't always healthy, right? It's like they're finding ways to function and to survive, but the underlying trauma is still there.
The novel is constantly drawing this connection between Jude's childhood and his present struggles. He's plagued by flashbacks and nightmares, and it impacts his ability to trust and form healthy relationships.
He's almost trapped by his past in a way.
You can see that in his self-destructive behaviors. It's a stark reminder of the powerful hold that trauma can have, how it can warp your sense of self, your relationships, even your perception of the world.
But it's not all bleak, is it?
No, not at all.
There are these glimmers of hope that shine through in Jude's story.
Absolutely. The unwavering love and support of his friends, especially Willem, is a constant presence. And then there's his adoption by Harold and Julia, which brings him a sense of family, a belonging that he so clearly craved.
You see him tentatively opening up to them, you know, allowing himself to be cared for.
Yeah, it's a reminder that even amidst immense pain, human connection and love can exist. It's a testament to the enduring human spirit and the capacity to find beauty and connection, even in the face of unimaginable suffering.
And speaking of unimaginable suffering, there's one aspect of Jude's past that's particularly difficult to grapple with.
His relationship with brother Luke, it's a deeply disturbing aspect of his past, and one that continues to haunt him well into adulthood.
Yeah, it's hard to even talk about, but it's such a crucial part of understanding, his struggles.
You see this young boy already so wounded, seeking solace and connection in a place that's supposed to offer him safety and guidance.
And instead, he encounters this figure of authority
Yeah.
who manipulates and exploits him. It's just heartbreaking.
And what makes it even more complex is that Jude clearly has fond memories of brother Luke, too. He remembers those intellectual conversations, their shared love of learning.
It speaks to the complex psychology of trauma survivors, right? That the lines between affection and abuse can become so blurred, especially for a child who's been deprived of love and stability.
Exactly, and the novel doesn't shy away from showing how this relationship impacts Jude's present-day life.
Yeah.
It's like a poison that seeped into his very being.
Yeah, you see it in his discomfort with intimacy, his self-destructive behaviors, his inability to trust. It's almost as if he's internalized the abuse,
Yeah.
believing that he somehow deserved it.
And his reluctance to fully open up about these experiences, even to Willem, speaks to the shame and secrecy that so often surrounds these types of traumatic events. It's like he's carrying this immense burden, but he doesn't know how to share it.
Which brings us to, I think, a really pivotal moment in the book. Jude's breakdown after witnessing Willem's self-harm.
Oh gosh, that scene just rips your heart out. Willem, desperate to make Jude understand the pain that he inflicts on himself, cuts his own arm.
I remember gasping when I read that. It's such a misguided act of empathy. But you understand where it's coming from.
Yeah, Willem's driven by this intense love for Jude
Hmm.
and this frustration at not being able to reach him.
But it backfires so spectacularly. It triggers this profound emotional response in Jude, forcing him to confront the reality of his own self-destructive behavior.
And it also underscores the limitations of empathy, too. You know,
Yeah.
no matter how deeply we care for someone, we can't fully comprehend their pain, and we can't force them to heal on our terms.
It's a turning point in their relationship, I think. It forces them to reevaluate, their roles and their expectations.
And it really highlights the importance of boundaries, even in the most loving relationships. Each individual needs space to process their trauma in their own way.
It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the most loving act we can offer is to simply be present, without judgment or expectation, to create that safe space for vulnerability, without trying to impose our own understanding of what healing should look like.
Speaking of healing, let's talk about Jude's career. It's fascinating how his professional life seems to mirror his internal struggles.
Yeah, it's like he's seeking control in the courtroom, the sense of justice that's been missing from his own life.
He excels as a prosecutor, but then makes this really unexpected move to a corporate law firm.
Almost like he's trying to bury himself in work to create this sense of order in a world that's always felt chaotic to him.
Yeah. And that desire for control extends to his personal life, too. Remember his apartment on Green Street?
Yeah.
The way he meticulously designs every detail. It's like he's creating this sanctuary, this perfect space where nothing can hurt him.
It's a reflection of his need for boundaries, for a sense of agency in a life where he so often felt powerless.
Which makes his relationship with Caleb even more tragic.
Because on the surface, it seems to offer everything Jude craves, right? Stability, companionship, this sense of normalcy.
But as the layers are peeled back, you see the manipulation and the emotional abuse. The way Caleb preys on Jude's vulnerabilities.
And what's heartbreaking is how Jude rationalizes it, almost as if he believes he deserves to be treated this way.
It speaks to the deeply ingrained sense of worthlessness that often accompanies trauma, right? This belief that love and affection must be earned through suffering.
It's a reminder that healing from trauma is a journey, not a destination, and that even the strongest individuals can fall into these destructive patterns.
Which makes his adoption by Harold and Julia all the more poignant.
They offer him this unconditional love, the sense of family he's always yearned for.
It's like they see the wounded child beneath the successful lawyer, and they embrace him with this incredible compassion and understanding.
But even with them, he struggles to fully accept their love.
His past continues to haunt him, making it difficult to trust their good intentions or believe that he truly deserves their affection.
It's heartbreaking to see him pushing them away, sabotaging the very thing he craves most, a sense of belonging.
It's a reminder of the long shadow that trauma can cast, how it can distort our perceptions of love and make it difficult to accept the very thing we need most.
Yet, even in the face of this darkness, there are these moments of genuine connection, like when Jude finally decides to tell Willem about his past.
That's such a pivotal moment in the book, this courageous act of vulnerability, a step towards breaking free from the secrecy and shame that have defined his life for so long.
And it's a testament to the power of their relationship. You see how Willem listens without judgment, how he holds space for Jude's pain.
It's a reminder that sometimes the most powerful act of love is to simply be present, to offer a safe space for vulnerability and shared pain.
And this idea of shared pain, it makes me think about the complexities of friendship in the novel. It's not just about the intense loyalty of Jude's inner circle, but also the challenges they face.
Exactly. They're all navigating their own lives, their own struggles, and their dynamic shifts and evolves over time.
You see moments of tension, especially between JB and the others.
Yeah, JB with his sharp wit and often self-centered perspective can be abrasive, particularly when it comes to Jude's struggles.
It's like he doesn't fully grasp the depth of Jude's trauma, the complexities of his coping mechanisms.
And his attempts to offer support often come across as clumsy or even hurtful.
It's a dynamic that I think many of us can relate to, wanting to be there for a friend who's going through something difficult, but not always knowing the right words to say or actions to take.
But what's remarkable is that their bond endures. They make mistakes, they hurt each other, but they ultimately find a way to come back together.
It's a testament to the enduring power of friendship, the ability to forgive, to grow, and to support each other through thick and thin.
And speaking of enduring power, we have to talk about Hanya Yanagihara's writing style.
Oh, it's as captivating as the story itself. She has this way of holding a magnifying glass to the human condition, forcing you to confront these raw, uncomfortable truths of our existence.
Her prose is both beautiful and brutal. She doesn't shy away from depicting the darker aspects of human experience, but she does so with this profound sense of empathy and understanding that makes even the most difficult passages resonate with this feeling of truth.
Remember that scene where Jude is describing his childhood at the group home?
Oh, yeah.
The institutional smells, the feeling of being constantly watched. It's so visceral.
Exactly. It's like she transports you into Jude's world. You feel his pain and isolation as if it were your own.
And yet amidst the darkness, there are these moments of beauty and grace. The way she describes the bond between Jude and Willem, the tenderness, the shared laughter, it breaks your heart knowing the challenges they'll face.
It's a testament to her skill as a writer, her ability to balance these extremes of human experience with such nuance and precision. It's what makes A Little Life such a challenging but ultimately rewarding read.
And one of the biggest challenges for the reader, I think, is the way Yanagihara explores the limits of empathy. We see this most clearly in Willem's relationship with Jude.
Willem wants to fix Jude's pain. He loves him so fiercely. But his attempts to help are often met with resistance.
It creates this heartbreaking dynamic. Willem feels helpless and frustrated, and Jude feels misunderstood and burdened.
It's a reminder that even in the most loving relationships, we can't fully comprehend another person's pain. We can't force them to heal on our terms.
And you see Willem eventually coming to terms with this. He learns to simply be present, to offer support without judgment or expectation.
It's a powerful lesson in the art of compassionate companionship, to love someone, flaws and all, and to accept that their healing journey is their own.
Now, shifting gears a bit, one of the things that struck me about the book is how it portrays the different ways people cope with trauma.
It's not a monolithic experience. You see it so clearly in the contrast between Jude's coping mechanisms and those of his friends.
Willem channels his pain into physical activity. Malcolm seeks solace in his work. And JB uses humor as a shield.
And Jude turns his pain inwards through self-harm and emotional withdrawal.
It's a stark reminder that there's no right or wrong way to cope with trauma. Each individual needs to find what works best for them.
And sometimes that means seeking professional help, acknowledging that you can't do it alone.
The book doesn't offer easy answers, but it does provide this incredible exploration of trauma's complexities and its lasting impact.
Absolutely. It challenges us to recognize the signs of trauma in ourselves and in others,
Yeah.
and to offer support and compassion to those who are struggling to heal.
And speaking of struggling to heal, I think it's important to talk about the novel's exploration of the search for belonging and acceptance.
Yeah, it's a theme that runs throughout the story, but it's most prominent in Jude's journey. He's haunted by this sense of rootlessness, stemming from his childhood experiences of abandonment.
He craves family connection, a place where he feels safe and loved unconditionally.
And while his friendships offer a sense of belonging, it's not until his adoption by Harold and Julia that he begins to experience a deeper sense of family.
It's like they provide him with a foundation he's never had, a sense of stability and unconditional love.
But even within this loving family, Jude struggles to fully accept their affection or believe that he truly deserves their love.
You see his past continuing to haunt him, making it difficult to trust their good intentions. or let go of his ingrained sense of worthlessness. It's heartbreaking to witness.
It underscores the enduring impact of trauma on our ability to form attachments, to trust, to allow ourselves to be loved.
And it reminds us that healing is a process, that it takes time, patience, and a willingness to confront the deeply ingrained beliefs that keep us from experiencing true connection.
Speaking of connection, let's talk about the power dynamics that shape the relationships in the novel.
This is where the book gets really dark. It's not just about Jude's past experiences of abuse, but also the ways in which power imbalances play out in his adult relationships.
You see it in his relationship with Caleb, where he's manipulated and controlled.
And even in his interactions with Willem, where there's this underlying dynamic of savior and victim, despite the genuine love and care they have for each other.
It's a reminder that power dynamics can be subtle and insidious, that they can seep into even the most well-intentioned relationships.
And that we need to be constantly aware of these dynamics, to challenge them, to create spaces where everyone feels safe and empowered, to assert their boundaries and needs.
Absolutely. And speaking of empowerment, let's talk about JB and his creative journey.
Oh, he's such a fascinating character. So ambitious, so driven, but also so insecure and desperate for validation.
You see him grappling with self-doubt, with inspiration, with the challenges of translating his vision into art.
He's constantly seeking approval, but also terrified of rejection.
And you see how his relationships with his friends influence his work. He draws inspiration from their lives, their personalities, their struggles.
It's like he's trying to make sense of the world and his own place in it through his art.
And this struggle to find his own voice, to create work that is authentically his own, is something that many creative individuals can relate to.
It's a reminder that the creative process is rarely linear or straightforward. It's messy, it's chaotic, it's filled with self-doubt and moments of brilliance.
But it's also a process that can be incredibly rewarding, leading to moments of profound insight, connection, and self-discovery.
And speaking of self-discovery, one of the things that struck me about the novel is how it portrays the passage of time and its impact on the characters.
We see them aging, evolving their relationships, deepening their careers, taking unexpected turns.
And their bodies start to show the wear and tear of time, the physical manifestations of their experiences.
But amidst these changes, there's also a sense of continuity. The bonds of friendship and love endure, the scars of the past remain, and the search for meaning continues.
It's like life is this river that's constantly flowing, carrying us along on its currents. But there are certain rocks and landmarks that remain constant.
It's a beautiful and poignant reminder that life is a journey, not a destination, and that even as we age and change, there are certain constants that remain, shaping our experiences and connecting us to our past, present, and future.
And speaking of shaping our experiences, I think it's fascinating how Yanagihara uses New York City as a backdrop for the characters' lives.
Yeah, it's more than just a setting in a little life. It's almost a character in itself. This vibrant, chaotic, and often unforgiving metropolis, that mirrors the emotional landscape of the characters.
It's a city of extremes, where wealth and poverty, beauty and ugliness coexist in this uneasy tension.
And it both challenges and nourishes the characters, offering opportunities for growth and connection, but also exposing them to the harsh realities of urban life.
You see them navigating the crowded streets, the bustling restaurants, the intimate spaces of their apartments. Each location becomes a stage for their interactions, their conflicts, their moments of intimacy.
And the city's energy, its anonymity, its constant state of flux, it both reflects and amplifies their inner turmoil.
It's a setting that both shapes and is shaped by the characters, creating this dynamic interplay between the individual and the environment.
It's a testament to Hanya Yanagihara's skill as a writer, that she captures the essence of New York City with such vividness and authenticity.
And it's a reminder of the power of setting to enhance a story, to create a sense of place and atmosphere that resonates with the reader on a visceral level.
Speaking of resonating, one of the themes that resonated most deeply with me is the novel's exploration of forgiveness.
It's a complex theme that weaves its way throughout the story. We see it in Jude's struggle to forgive those who've harmed him.
And perhaps even more importantly, his struggle to forgive himself.
He carries this immense burden of guilt and shame, believing that he somehow deserved the abuse he endured.
And this inability to forgive himself manifests in his self-destructive behaviors, his emotional withdrawal, his difficulty accepting love and affection from others.
The novel doesn't offer easy answers to the question of forgiveness, but it does provide a powerful exploration of the complexities of this human emotion, the challenges of letting go of anger and resentment,
and the potential for healing that can emerge from a place of genuine forgiveness,
Yeah.
both of ourselves and others.
You mentioned healing, and it makes me think about the ways in which the novel portrays the possibility of redemption, even in the face of past mistakes and transgressions.
It's most evident in JB's arc. He's initially portrayed as abrasive and self-centered.
His struggles with addiction and his tendency to prioritize his own desires over the well-being of others lead to conflict and strained relationships.
But as the story unfolds, you see him making efforts to change, to acknowledge his flaws, and to apologize for his past mistakes.
His artistic journey becomes intertwined with his personal growth. It's like he's channeling his pain, his regrets, and his newfound empathy into his work.
Remember the scene where he unveils those portraits of his friends?
Oh, yeah.
It's a powerful expression of his desire to make amends, to honor the people he cares about, and to create something beautiful and meaningful out of the wreckage of his past mistakes.
It's a reminder that even those who've strayed from the path can find a way back, that redemption is possible, and that the human heart has an infinite capacity for growth, transformation, and forgiveness.
Speaking of transformation, let's talk about the ending of the book. It's ambiguous, leaving the reader with a sense of both hope and uncertainty.
It's a deliberate choice by Yanagihara, I think. A recognition that life rarely offers neat resolutions or fairy tale endings.
It's more like real life, messy and unpredictable. It forces us to grapple with the complexities of the human experience, to acknowledge that healing is a journey, not a destination.
And it leaves us with this lingering empathy for the characters, a desire to know what becomes of them. Their stories, like our own, continue to unfold long after the final page is turned.
And that open-endedness, I think, is what makes A Little Life such a powerful and thought-provoking novel. It invites us to reflect on our own experiences and to grapple with the big questions about life, love, loss, and the search for meaning.
Speaking of grappling with big questions, let's talk about some of the stylistic choices Yanagihara makes that really enhance the reading experience.
The use of flashbacks and nonlinear storytelling is particularly effective. It's like she's weaving together past and present to create this layered and complex narrative that gradually reveals the depths of Jude's trauma and its impact on his life.
Yeah, the flashbacks are often fragmented and disorienting, mirroring the way trauma can distort our memories.
It forces us to piece together the puzzle of Jude's life alongside him, to experience his pain and confusion as it unfolds.
It's a bold choice, but it makes the story so much more impactful.
It elevates A Little Life beyond a simple story of suffering. It becomes a meditation on memory, on the ways the past shapes our present, and on trauma's enduring power.
And then there's her use of sensory detail. The book is rich with vivid descriptions that appeal to all five senses.
She describes textures, aromas, sounds, the physical sensations of pain and pleasure, with such detail that you're completely immersed in the world of the story.
It makes the characters' experiences so visceral, so real, that you almost feel them yourself.
And it adds this emotional weight to the story, making the characters' joys and sorrows even more palpable.
It's like she's not just telling you a story, she's making you feel it in your bones.
Exactly. And speaking of feeling it in your bones, one of the most striking motifs in the novel is the use of physical scars as a metaphor for the enduring impact of trauma.
Jude's body is literally a map of his pain, a canvas etched with the marks of his past.
And while he tries to hide these scars, they're a constant reminder of the ways his past continues to shape his present.
The novel also explores the metaphorical scars that trauma can leave on our souls, the invisible wounds that can fester long after the physical injuries have healed.
You see it in Jude's emotional withdrawal, his self-destructive behaviors, his inability to trust.
It's a powerful reminder that trauma runs deep, that it can shape us in ways we don't even realize.
And that healing takes time, patience, and a willingness to confront the pain that lingers beneath the surface.
Now, shifting gears a bit, one thing that struck me about the novel is how it subtly addresses social class and economic inequality.
You see it in the contrast between Jude's humble beginnings and the affluent world he inhabits as an adult.
And the privileges his friends enjoy. The access and opportunities that were never available to him.
Exactly, and while his friends are deeply compassionate, there are moments where their understanding of Jude's struggles is limited by their own experiences.
It raises questions about empathy, about whether it's truly possible to bridge the gap between vastly different lived realities.
And it adds another layer to the novel's exploration of power dynamics, not just in personal relationships, but in the structures of society itself.
Speaking of power dynamics, I think it's important to address how the novel handles the theme of consent, particularly in relation to Jude's traumatic past.
This is where A Little Life becomes particularly challenging. It forces us to confront the lasting effects of abuse, how it can warp a person's understanding of healthy relationships.
You see it in Jude's experiences with Brother Luke, the counselors at the group home, Dr. Trailer, all these figures of authority who exploit his vulnerability and violate his trust.
It's uncomfortable to read, but it's a necessary conversation. It shines a light on the insidious ways abuse can rob a person of their agency, their sense of self.
And how those experiences can make it difficult to navigate intimacy, to assert boundaries, to even recognize what healthy relationships look like.
Exactly. It's a reminder that the impact of trauma can be far-reaching, and that healing is often a lifelong journey.
And it's interesting, because the novel doesn't shy away from exploring the complexities of desire and intimacy, particularly for someone like Jude, who's been so deeply wounded.
You see it in his relationships with both Willem and Caleb. On the one hand, there's this deep yearning for connection, for love, for physical intimacy.
But there's also this fear, this hesitation, this sense that he's both drawn to and terrified of closeness.
It's like he's caught in this push and pull between his desire for intimacy and the deep-seated fear that it will inevitably lead to pain and rejection.
And I think it's a struggle that many people can relate to, regardless of whether they've experienced trauma, the desire to be loved and accepted, but also the fear of being hurt or disappointed.
Absolutely, it's a fundamental human experience, the longing for connection, but also the vulnerability that comes with opening ourselves up to another person.
And A Little Life explores this duality with such honesty and compassion. It doesn't offer easy answers or simplistic solutions.
But it does remind us that even in the face of fear and uncertainty, connection is possible. That vulnerability can lead to profound intimacy and healing.
And that sometimes the greatest act of love is to simply meet someone where they are, to offer acceptance and understanding without judgment or expectation.
Speaking of meeting someone where they are, one of the most poignant aspects of the novel is the exploration of chosen family.
We see this most clearly in Jude's relationships with his friends. They become his anchors, his support system, his chosen family.
They create this space where he feels seen, understood, and loved unconditionally.
They celebrate his triumphs, offer solace during his struggles, and accept some flaws and all.
It's a beautiful testament to the power of friendship, to provide a sense of belonging and unconditional love, especially for those who have experienced familial trauma or rejection.
And you see this chosen family dynamic playing out in so many ways throughout the story.
From the intimate dinners they share, to the way they rally around Jude during times of crisis, they create this sense of home and stability that he's always yearned for.
It's a reminder that family isn't always defined by blood, but by the bonds we choose to create and nurture.
And that sometimes the people who understand and accept us most deeply are the ones we choose to share our lives with, the ones who become our chosen family.
Speaking of sharing our lives, the novel is saturated with loss. We see the characters grappling with the deaths of loved ones, the loss of relationships, and the gradual erosion of their own physical and mental well-being.
It's a reminder that loss is an inevitable part of life.
Yeah.
That we all experience it in different ways.
Yeah.
And that it can leave us feeling heartbroken, lost, and unsure of how to move forward.
But the novel also acknowledges the resilience of the human spirit, the capacity to find ways to honor our loved ones, to cherish the memories we hold dear, and to find a way to move forward, even in the face of profound loss.
And it highlights the importance of support systems, of having people in our lives who can help us navigate grief and loss, who can offer comfort and understanding during times of darkness.
And it's interesting because even though the novel deals with such heavy themes, there's also this subtle exploration of humor and its role in coping with difficult experiences.
Yeah, you see it in the banter between the friends, the way they use humor to deflect tension, to lighten the mood, and to create moments of joy even in the midst of suffering.
It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, laughter can be a lifeline, a way to connect with others, and to remind ourselves of the absurdity and beauty of life.
And is a testament to the human spirit's ability to find moments of levity and joy, even when confronted with pain and loss.
They're shifting gears a bit. I think it's important to talk about how the novel subverts traditional notions of masculinity.
It's so refreshing to see these complex, multifaceted male characters who defy easy categorization.
They're not afraid to express their emotions, to be vulnerable, to seek support from each other.
And they challenge traditional stereotypes of what it means to be a man.
You see this in Willem's tenderness and compassion, in Malcolm's artistic sensibility, and even in JB's willingness to acknowledge his flaws and seek help when he needs it.
And Jude, with his complex history of trauma and his struggle to reconcile his physical and emotional selves embodies a more nuanced and multifaceted understanding of masculinity.
It's a reminder that there's no one right way to be a man, that strength can be found in vulnerability, and that embracing a wider range of emotions and experiences can lead to greater fulfillment and connection.
And speaking of fulfillment and connection, the novel also explores the theme of self-acceptance.
We see this most clearly in Jude's journey to come to terms with his physical and emotional scars. He's haunted by this sense of shame and worthlessness.
He struggled to accept himself, to believe that he's worthy of love and belonging.
And this self-hatred manifests in his self-destructive behaviors, his emotional withdrawal, and his difficulty accepting love and affection from others.
It's a heartbreaking cycle, highlighting the enduring impact of trauma and the insidious ways in which self-hatred can sabotage our happiness and well-being.
But amidst the darkness, there are glimmers of hope. Moments where you see Jude taking tentative steps towards self-acceptance, allowing himself to be loved and cared for.
It's a reminder that healing is possible even from the deepest wounds.
And that self-acceptance is a journey, not a destination. It's something we have to work at, to cultivate, to practice day after day.
And it's a journey that's worth taking, because ultimately self-acceptance is the key to living a life that's authentic, meaningful, and fulfilling.
And speaking of authenticity, I think it's fascinating how the novel explores the complexities of memory and how they shape our understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
You see this most prominently in Jude's fragmented memories of his traumatic past.
He struggles to piece together the events of his childhood, grappling with gaps in his memory, distorted recollections, and the overwhelming emotional weight of his experiences.
And these fragmented memories haunt him, shaping his worldview, his relationships, his sense of self. He's plagued by nightmares, flashbacks, and a pervasive sense of unease.
It's a reminder that memory isn't always reliable, that it's a subjective and often distorted lens through which we view our experiences.
And it underscores the enduring power of trauma, how it can fracture our sense of self and warp our perceptions of the world.
Now, shifting gears a bit, one of the things I found most compelling about A Little Life is the way it explores the power of storytelling as a means of processing trauma and finding meaning in the face of adversity.
You see this most clearly in Jude's gradual sharing of his past with Willem. As he recounts his experiences, he begins to piece together the fragmented memories of his childhood, to make sense of the chaos and pain that have long haunted him.
It's like the act of storytelling itself becomes a form of healing, a way to reclaim his narrative and assert his agency over the events that have shaped his life.
It's a reminder that sharing our stories with those we trust can help us heal, grow, and find a sense of peace and understanding.
And speaking of healing, I think it's important to talk about the novel's exploration of resilience.
It's a powerful theme that runs throughout the story, particularly in Jude's ability to persevere despite the unimaginable trauma he's endured.
He faces countless challenges, both physical and emotional, yet he finds a way to keep going, to find moments of joy and fulfillment, to connect with others on a deep level.
It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, the human spirit can find a way to endure, to adapt, and to find strength and hope.
And it's a message that resonates deeply with those who face their own personal challenges, reminding us that we're all capable of overcoming adversity and creating a life that is both meaningful and fulfilling.
And speaking of meaning and fulfillment, the novel also explores the complexities of human sexuality, particularly in Jude's journey.
His experiences of abuse have left him with deep-seated fears and anxieties, making it difficult for him to engage in physical intimacy without triggering intense emotional distress.
You see this play out in his relationships, where he's torn between his desire for connection and his fear of being hurt or rejected.
It's a reminder that healing from sexual trauma is a complex and often challenging process, one that requires patience, compassion, and willingness to confront deeply ingrained fears.
And the novel doesn't shy away from depicting the ways in which trauma can distort our perceptions of love and intimacy, leading us to seek out relationships that mirror the pain we've experienced in the past.
But it also acknowledges the possibility of healing, the potential for growth and transformation, and the importance of finding safe and supportive relationships, where we can explore our sexuality in healthy and fulfilling ways.
And that's a powerful message, especially in a world where sexuality is often portrayed in simplistic and often unrealistic ways.
It's interesting because even though the novel focuses so heavily on Jude's struggles, it also offers these beautiful glimpses into the lives of his friends.
And it's through their stories that we see the complexities of ambition, the challenges of navigating relationships, and the enduring power of friendship to provide support and meaning in our lives.
Willem with his quiet strength and unwavering loyalty, Malcolm with his artistic vision and his deep compassion, and JB with his sharp wit and his journey towards self-awareness. They each bring something unique and valuable to the story.
And the relationships with Jude are a testament to the different ways in which love can manifest, the challenges and rewards of intimacy, and the profound impact that the human connection can have on our lives.
And speaking of impact, I think it's important to acknowledge how the novel addresses the theme of mental illness.
Yeah, it's handled with sensitivity and nuance, avoiding simplistic diagnoses or sensationalized portrayals.
You see Jude grappling with depression, anxiety, and self-destructive tendencies, but it's never presented as a defining characteristic or a source of shame.
Instead, it's woven into the fabric of his character, a reflection of the trauma he's endured and the ways in which it's shaped his perceptions of himself and the world around him.
And it highlights the importance of seeking help, of finding support systems, and of recognizing that mental illness is not a sign of weakness, but a legitimate health concern that requires care and attention.
And it's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there's always hope, that healing is possible and that reaching out for help can be a sign of strength and resilience.
Now, shifting gears a bit, one of the things I found most intriguing about A Little Life is how it explores the nature of truth and perception.
The novel challenges us to question our assumptions about reality, to recognize the subjective nature of experience, and to acknowledge the ways in which our perspectives are shaped by our own biases, our past experiences, and the information we choose to pay attention to.
You see this most clearly in the conflicting accounts of Jude's past, the different interpretations of his behavior, and the ways in which his friends struggle to reconcile their perceptions of him with the reality of his experiences.
It's a reminder that there's no one single truth, that every story has multiple perspectives, and that understanding requires us to listen with open hearts and minds, to consider different viewpoints, and to embrace the complexity and ambiguity. That's inherent in the human experience.
It's like we're all looking at the world through our own individual kaleidoscopes. And while our perspectives may overlap, they're never going to be identical.
Exactly, and it's through those differences in perception that we can learn and grow, challenge our own assumptions, and develop a more nuanced understanding of the world around us.
And speaking of nuanced understanding, I think it's important to talk about the ways in which A Little Life challenges us to think critically about the systems and structures that shape our lives.
The novel touches upon a range of social issues, from poverty and inequality to the failings of the criminal justice system and the cyclical nature of abuse.
It doesn't offer easy answers or simplistic solutions, but it does force us to confront uncomfortable truths about the ways in which society often fails to protect its most vulnerable members.
And it challenges us to think about our own roles in perpetuating or challenging these systems, to consider the ways in which our choices and actions can have a ripple effect, and to recognize the interconnectedness of our lives and experiences.
It's a reminder that we're all part of a larger web of relationships and systems, and that even small acts of kindness, compassion, and advocacy can make a difference.
Speaking of making a difference, one of the things I admire most about Yanagihara's writing is her ability to provoke strong emotional responses in her readers.
A Little Life is a book that stays with you long after you've finished reading it. It sparks conversations, it challenges assumptions, and it forces us to confront our own beliefs about love loss and the human condition.
It's a testament to the power of art, to move us, to make us think, to expand our understanding of the world and ourselves.
And it's a reminder that even the most challenging and uncomfortable stories can be valuable, that they can teach us empathy, compassion, and a deeper appreciation for the complexities of the human experience.
Speaking of challenging and uncomfortable, we have to talk about the controversy surrounding A Little Life. It's been both praised and criticized for its graphic depiction of trauma and abuse.
It's a difficult conversation, but I think it's an important one. Some readers have found the book to be too intense, too triggering, and they've questioned whether the level of suffering depicted is necessary or even exploitative.
And those are valid concerns. It's important to acknowledge that trauma is a sensitive subject, and that every reader brings their own experiences and sensitivities to the table.
But I also think it's important to recognize that Yanagihara is not glorifying or sensationalizing trauma.
She's shining a light on a dark and often hidden aspect of human experience, and she's doing so with a level of compassion and understanding that's rare to find.
She's not offering easy answers or simplistic solutions, but she's inviting us to engage with difficult questions, to confront uncomfortable truths, and to develop a deeper understanding of the complexities of trauma and its enduring impact.
And I think that's ultimately what makes A Little Life such a powerful and enduring work of art. It challenges us to confront our own biases, our own assumptions about the world, and our own capacity for empathy and compassion.
And it reminds us that even in the face of unimaginable suffering, there's beauty to be found, that human connection can be a source of profound healing, and that the human spirit is capable of enduring, adapting, and finding meaning, even in the midst of darkness.
So we've covered a lot of ground today. We've talked about resilience, friendship, trauma, social issues, the power of storytelling, and the complexities of the human experience.
But I think what's most important is that you, our listener, take away your own insights from A Little Life.
It's a book that demands to be discussed, debated, and wrestled with.
And it's a book that will stay with you long after you've finished reading it, prompting you to ask questions, to challenge assumptions, and to view the world with a newfound sense of empathy and understanding.
So we encourage you to pick up A Little Life, to dive deep into its world, and to discover its secrets for yourself. It's a journey worth taking.
And as always, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep those minds curious.